Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to the Women in IT Leadership webinar. Before we get into introductions of these lovely ladies that I have joining me today, we do have just a few housekeeping items that we want to go through as you may be newer to GoToWebinar. Even though we're all virtual, we really want to feel connected on this event. So questions, comments are welcome in the chat. We will try to allow about 15 minutes at the end of the webinar for any questions that you may have. So please be sure you're adding questions, you're adding comments, or just empowering each other in the chat. We all want to read those as well. We will be monitoring it, so feel free to add your questions and then we will address it at the end. Well, I am excited to spend the next hour together to celebrate Women's History Month and really share some great insights from two dynamic women leaders and how their contributions are helping to shape the technology industry. Today, women are sadly underrepresented in the tech sector. I read the other day that from the National Center for Women in Information Technology, it reported that in the year 2021, only 26% of tech jobs were held by women. We are seeing that grow to 28% in 2022, but we just can't ignore it anymore. Women really have been at the forefront of technology. So today, I'm looking for us all to empower each other, learn how to be an ally, and understand what the tech landscape looks like today. My name is Rachel Enstrom, and I'm the Senior Global Director of Product Technology and Marketing for Horizontal Talent. If you're not familiar with Horizontal, we're a global staffing company based in Minneapolis with 4 offices in the US and 6 throughout India, Malaysia, and Australia. We are a people-first business. We specialize in placing highly skilled job seekers in contract and direct hire roles with some of the greatest companies in search of IT, digital marketing, and creative and business strategy. So today I want to introduce our panel for today's conversation. We have Binish Kahn, Vice President of Technology at Fishawack Health. And we also have Tammylynne Jonas, Chief Information Officer at Donaldson. So let's kick things off. I'd like both of you to please tell our audience a little bit more about your career path in IT. And as a woman specifically, what did you do differently to grow into your career? Binish, why don't we kick things off with you?
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking out the time to join us today. I'm really excited. So I'm VP of Technology at Fishawack Health. We're a global partner in the life sciences field. I'm part of the digital experience technology team that services all areas of the business, from global marketing to medical communications. We have a pretty big focus on omni-channel engagement technology, data, and analytics in order to empower our clients to, improve health and business outcomes. I did not have a very traditional path into the tech industry. I didn't go for a software engineering degree. I actually was studying neuroscience and then by chance one summer I kind of fell into developing websites. It was it started off as a side project, and I absolutely loved the fact that I could build something that someone would interact with, and that was kind of like the spark that I needed. I'm gonna date myself here, and we'll say that back in the day, there weren't that many online resources that are now available, right? If you wanted to break into the tech industry. So I may or may have not, gone to my local library and checked out books on coding and taught myself how to code. And from there on, I cold called all the nonprofits in my community to see if they had digital work, what I could, offer over there. So I created content. I had a graphic design background as well as a hobby. So I designed websites for them until I, landed my first paid gig. And after that, there was another moment in my career where I had to decide, did I still want to continue, building and coding, or did I want to shift over to management and leadership? And that was kind of hard, right? But you come to a realization that you can still make an impact. You can still use technology to, solve problems when, even in a management role and a leadership role, and you can empower others, to help, problem solve along with you. So I still do coding on the side just to fulfill that need to build. But I've I'm very grateful that I get to work in a field that is constantly evolving, and then it's also opening up doors to a lot more like females in the field for sure.
Thank you, Binish. Tammylynne.
I would say that my entry into the technology field was untraditional. As an undergrad, I didn't really know what I was going to do with my degree, so I went to a small private liberal arts school, and I majored in math, English, and Spanish. And one of the companies that recruited from my campus was Anderson Consulting at the time. I'm that old, before it was Accenture. And so I started working in technology consulting, and I hadn't done any sort of coding before. I went to a 3-week boot camp in Java and ended up working on JCL and COBOL and mainframe technologies for a couple of years. I spent 15 years at Kohl's department stores in progressive roles. I started in a very non-technical role. I started as a corporate trainer and then just kind of moved into technology, doing project management, et cetera. This is my third CIO role. I think the things that have probably helped me in my career along the way, especially as I was earlier in my career, is number one is being willing to take on other tasks as assigned, right? It may not seem like it's something that's important, but if you're the person that's willing to help plan the annual meeting or the holiday party or whatever, it does give you exposure to the executive team because they don't want to do it either, right? So if you are taking work off their plate and demonstrate, there's a lot of project management that goes into planning a holiday party for 2,000 people. So you're demonstrating project management skills, budgeting skills, you get exposure to executives, things like that. I think were helpful for me, and just never shying away from tasks like that. Being the one to do the team building exercise at a meeting, things like that, just give you exposure. I think the other piece is really understanding that technology is more than just the technology. There's so much communication that needs to go into it. Being able to translate technical concepts for non-technical audience has been something that's been really important in my career. So if you can explain the cloud to a bunch of marketers and why it's important, you're doing pretty well. So I think, number one, the willingness to take on tasks that are maybe not in my immediate scope of responsibility. And then number two, just leveraging communication skills and not always depending on, technology acumen.
Thank you. I love hearing about both of your backgrounds, and whether it was coding or art or design. It's great to see where you've landed today, and continue to see your journey throughout. So one of the topics that we wanted to talk about today was the job market. And given today's market, especially in this tough economy that we have, we're starting to see companies start to cut those unessential tools, technologies from their tech stack. The idea of purchasing new tools are maybe not applicable or off the table for some of the companies. So no new headcount, no new spend, no new tools. Our team at Horizontal is always constantly asking ourselves, if I'm already paying for a technology in our current stack, how could I better leverage it? How could I help our team members, both from the producer side, but then also from the operations side? So Binish, how are you thinking about your tech stack in terms of revenue, sales driving activities, and are there certain tools that you're prioritizing over others?
Yeah, absolutely. We always look to get the most impact out of our technologies. So a lot of the focus is on, deploy fit for purpose technologies that move the business forward. And it's not just about, what tech stack that you're using, right? And it's not like it's not based on the latest and greatest, but then also looking at, what's available in the market from a talent perspective. So in other words, we invested and chose key components of our tech stack, which have a large number of developers available. So it gave us access to well-trained, affordable talent. And then it was also, about how are those tools being utilized, right? So standardizing the process and how the teams are building it. So we're creating componentized libraries and design systems in close collaboration with the creative team, for example, to accelerate market velocity by getting things right the very first time. So you're not constantly, finding defects and resolving and get stuck in that loop. So how can we do things right the very first time? And currently, our focus when it comes to tools specifically has been on tools that integrate seamlessly. So like you said, like we don't have 5 different tools that do like one piece of this like big puzzle that we're looking for. So, and also how are they, like what's the ROI on that? Right. I feel like we evaluate people and we hold people accountable, but we need to start doing that with our tools too. So like reevaluate your tools every quarter, optimize, and get a report of like how they're performing. But definitely condensing and finding tools that, like one tool that kind of does it all. It has been our focus.
And is there
go ahead. I was going to say basically make technology work harder for us.
Yes, definitely. Well, we know how important like the evolution of digital transformation is. Is there a way that you're balancing implementing, new technology but also not over-indexing your team, right? Or jumping at every shiny new tool? How do you evolve with what's going on digitally?
Yeah, I think, if I were to look at it through the lens of the client, they always want, a purpose. There needs to be a purpose behind every technology that we're going to pursue, and that makes sense, right? But then we also need to stay ahead of the curve. So you're right, it's a fine balance between the two. You've got to put your business hat on and determine what is the priority, what business need this technology is going to solve, and then there is that initial implementation cost, right? That initial effort, but like don't forget to keep in mind that how is your team going to use that every single day? Like what is the impact on that day to day? As well as any processes, is it going to make your existing process even more cumbersome with the introduction of this new technology? So it kind of like goes back to like evaluating tools, like we evaluate technology at the same way. You want to stay ahead of the curve, but it has to make sense. It has to be purposeful, and then take the entire, software development life cycle into account, from beginning to end. What is the impact that it's going to have? So that's the evaluation phase that we go through.
Wonderful. And Tammylynne, knowing that there's a lot out there, there's a lot of new technologies that are always coming on the horizon. Our tech teams have to stay up to trend on what's going on, new languages, new skill sets. How do you stay current with the latest trends in technology, developments that are happening, and what resources do you rely on? Oh, can everybody hear Tammylynne?
I don't think I can hear you.
I don't think I can hear you either.
Not yet.
Sorry. Might be your speakers. We can't hear you, but let's keep going, and we'll come back once you get that fixed. Binish, anything you want to touch on as far as kind of the latest trends or developments in technology and how you rely on those or stay up to date?
Yeah, for sure. There are definitely, I've got my few like favorite newsletters that I've subscribed to, right? So TLDR is definitely one of my current ones. And then, Wired, there's actually a really great She Can Code blog that I absolutely love reading to kind of introduce me to what's out there, what can we try out, and then just taking that and trying it out on a small scale has been really successful, right? Just doing a pilot and then iterate often to improve until it becomes part of what you're using. I will say LinkedIn events and news is definitely something that I constantly go to. It's so easy. We're constantly on our phones all the time scrolling, and it's really nice to just spend even 5 minutes there, just absorbing a lot of information in a very condensed format. And that's something that I've been just doing a lot of.
Perfect. I think we have Tammylynne back.
Yeah.
The irony in all this is that I'm literally in my office. I've touched nothing. I couldn't have broken it. But as far as, how I stay current with trends, just to jump back to the other question, I really press the easy button on that. I spend a lot of time talking with other CIOs, CISOs, CTOs to understand what's top of mind for them. I like to look across a variety of interest, industries and company sizes. I also really leverage my partners from that. I mean, the goal of having partners is they have more time and expertise in a certain space. And so I'm not one to sit in my office and read a bunch of white papers by myself. I prefer to have the discussion and understand what other companies and people are doing.
Perfect. Yeah, there's a lot of great resources out there, whether it's other conferences, tech events. I've been a judge for a hackathon before, just sharing ideas and different opportunities with peers in our industry, I think are really important. Okay, so switching gears just a little bit to talk more about hiring technology talent. A lot of people across multiple industries are struggling with their headcount versus that sales projections for 2023. Binish, how are you thinking about growing your team during today's market? And as a leader, what keeps you going?
I think kind of going back to evaluating, right? This time around, it's like determining the right skills and experiences that that are needed to meet not just our revenue but also quality standards. So like going back to doing things right the first time. But finding and retaining talent has always been a challenge, and I think in the recent years it has become even more challenging. We invested into the remote work model quite early, and it's been really beneficial because it gave us access to talent just across the country. So that was something that that's been really helpful. And I will say that also retention, right? So making sure that your line managers are equipped with the right tools to develop and support their teams and keep them engaged as well, right? And I have to say, there's been a huge amount of focus on soft skills and the necessity of communication, like going back to what Tammylynne was talking about. You're like using communication to either explain non-technical concepts or just kind of like staying connected, making feel like everyone's inclusive and part of the team, part of the community. It's been something that I've invested heavily on, and just empathy. Like we're all in our homes or in our offices, but there's a lot of like the personal life that you see happening in the background, and just kind of like keeps you grounded and keeps you connected on a human level, even if you can be in person with other people. So yeah.
I agree with you. I think focusing on, employees' sense of ownership, giving people room to make decisions, manage their own work, as well as embracing that inclusivity where everyone's ideas are welcome, I think are really important. At Horizontal, we're also trying to develop and identify different training and professional development. So not only those soft skills, but those technical skills too. I guess, Tammylynne, from your standpoint, how do you plan to implement upskilling and training of your current team to improve your employee retention?
Maybe this is a function of working in a 107-year-old manufacturing company. The biggest, most important thing for us is being able to retain knowledge of all the systems that we have in our current state. So the biggest opportunity isn't necessarily that people need to learn the new cutting edge technology. It's that we need to not lose the knowledge that we have of our existing systems. So, one of the most important things that we do from a training perspective is cross-training our existing team, right? And so you might have, you got, hundreds of locations around the world. There's always like one local hero who knows how to do things at that facility. But making sure that if that person, decides to retire or wins the lottery, that there's other people that can do that. And so one of the things that I think has improved not only our employee engagement, but just our general, enthusiasm in the workplace is, cross-training our teams. And it also gives them a better understanding and appreciation for the work that their coworkers do around the world.
Definitely understanding that global aspect. Binish, anything to add on that? Especially, I know you talked about earlier the global remote teams as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with Tammylynne. I think she covered it. Like, how can you align personal career goals with business goals is a win-win formula, because you've got the business buy-in, and then you've got a very engaged employee, willing and wanting to learn.
Perfect. Well, thinking about the audience that we have in attendance today, and many of them being candidates searching for that next opportunity in the tech career, We're starting to see companies hire for positions around virtual, augmented reality, AI, as well as an increase in full stack engineers, data scientists. Tammylynne, I'm going to start you off with this question. When you think about the job positions that are out there right now, what is hot? What's hot in tech? And then what do you think are some of the most important qualities for success in technology?
Obviously, anybody that's working in data analytics, any of the teams supporting that, there's going to be a huge need for those types of skills. Anybody that has experience in, machine learning, AI, obviously lots of skills in that space as well. I think the most thing that that differentiates a candidate if they have those skills already is, we talked about communication being a part, the ability to work independently, the ability to be flexible in terms of what the work is, because very infrequently do you have somebody that's going to work on the same thing for 2 years, right? They might do a couple sprints on this and move, and so the ability to have that context shifting where they can handle and juggle multiple priorities is really important. And I think the biggest piece that makes you really in demand always is your willingness to learn new technologies and your willingness to learn new things. The things that are really hot right now will probably shift in the next couple of years as technology improves. So your ability to do that and shift with that is important. Interestingly, though, I do believe that there are still just some old school jobs that you can never find enough people that do it, right? So I've never met a DBA who's out of work. I mean, there's just certain roles that I think are always in demand.
I read the other day about a job position called Internet of Things. And it's essentially how we would work to connect the power of internet to everyday objects. So think self-driving career or cars. And I'm like, wow, we're in a whole different world now that we're talking about that. Binish, what's your take on the hot jobs in tech right now and the qualities that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think I'll echo a lot of what Tammylynne said. I think data and analytics, definitely something, and machine learning and AI are definitely something that we're seeing a lot of. We're also working towards that and starting to hire for some of those roles as well. And yeah, the ability to pick up a new skill and pick it up fast, the ability to problem solve are very crucial, because that's what's so exciting about the tech industry, right? It's constantly changing and evolving, and you have to keep up with it. And then empathy, I think, is a big one, right? It's a collaborative space, and you have to be able to work with others. It's a team sport, so just having empathy for what other people, what they do, and then just having a good understanding of it goes a long way.
And I'll open this up to both of you, and you addressed a little bit in the response of your last question, but when we think about the future, how do you think technology hiring, talent hiring will evolve in the next 5-10 years, especially now that we had remote workers. A lot of companies are going back to either a hybrid or an on-site model, and then also accommodating for those global team members and distribution. How do you think that will evolve over the next 5 to 10 years?
From my perspective, I feel like talent that is versatile is more valuable in an uncertain market. So if you are an all-around good athlete versus a very specialized person, I think that you have an advantage in an uncertain market because you can plug in and fill a lot of holes. Obviously there's always a need for specialists, but if your company is not doing a lot of work in that area, or if you are maybe reducing the amount of releases in that specific area, you need to be able to do other things. Otherwise, you're just going to be kind of sitting on the bench, and we're not quite sure what to do with you. Obviously, empathy, as Binish said, is important. But I think really the ability to problem solve is important. You might have skill set in this area, but if you're a really great problem solver, you ask really good questions, you probe, you get your hands dirty, I will plug you in someplace else, even if it's not your specialty, just because you're really good at helping the people on that team think critically and ask really good questions. So I think that the hiring will evolve in general by just maybe giving a little bit more of an edge to people that have more than one skill.
I think Yeah, I think I'm curious to see how AI is gonna be incorporated into the hiring process to remove bias and truly focus on inclusion and diversity. I feel like I think over the next, 4 or 5 years, we're definitely gonna see a shift towards that as well.
Perfect. Well, as we all know, it's Women's History Month, and we have a lot to celebrate this month, and don't want to miss out on opportunities to point out diversity in leadership. It does make our businesses better. So on this call, we have, as far as the audience goes, we have a broad group of diversity leaders that have been joining us, including some of our male colleagues, wondering how they probably can support women in technology. So Binish, I'm going to turn over the first question to you. How can our male colleagues be better advocates and allies in supporting women in technology?
Yeah, I've actually had many great male mentors, and there are two things that were common in everything that they did. Right, was just to like make space, make room for someone to be able to just like speak up, right? Like either they the meeting's running along, they don't feel comfortable, and just kind of like, hey, Binish, did you have something to say? Did you want to add on something? I'm just like making you feel inclusive, bringing you along to certain meetings that you might have not been a part of, just giving you that exposure, because I do think being a woman in the technology field could lead to a feeling of isolation and lack of visibility. So like that's really helpful. And then also giving credit where it's due, right? I think like so many times we've been in a room that, a female colleague might have said something, and very unintentionally, like a male colleague would say the same exact thing, and the entire room would just kind of gravitate towards that. So like in that moment, like speak up and say like, yeah, just like, so and so said, and I'm agreeing with that, and just kind of running with that. It just goes a long way.
Yes, I will commend that by saying, reminding ourselves that if we're invited to a meeting, we've earned that seat at the table. So making sure that our point is heard, and don't let that self-doubt get in our way, because sometimes it happens. Tammylynne, what are your thoughts on how our male colleagues can be better advocates and allies?
Well, I think the most important thing that they can do is they can try, and I think that's one of the things where I don't know that that's an active priority for a lot of men in the workplace. And I don't mean that in a flippant way. It doesn't mean that they're not good colleagues or kind or gracious or professional, whatever. But it takes extra work to be an advocate and a sponsor and a champion for women. And it's kind of like the difference between being racist and anti-racist. Like, for a long time, if you didn't say anything that was racist, you weren't racist, right? But then, the last couple of years, we've really been better educated around the fact that you actually have to be anti-racist. You have to like speak out against racism in order to not be, complicit with what's happening. And so I think, there are a lot of, to Binish's points, there's a lot of unsung heroes in IT just because they might be introverted or they may not be great spokespeople for what they do. How do we identify them? And it's, especially in technology, we have no problem saying like, we're cloud first. Like, we could be female first. I mean, we could challenge ourselves to actively, for there's an assignment or a meeting or something, to actively challenge ourselves to be like, hey, is there a woman that would be a good fit for that role or for that assignment? And if there isn't, then that's okay. But to really ask first instead of just going to your go-to people, is there a better way to be a better advocate and support women in IT? I also think that there's an assumption made that when women get to a certain point in their career that they don't need that anymore, right? Like, you've done a great job, you're a VP now, you got this. But I think women at all levels in their career still need that sponsorship and support. So don't make the assumption that because she got here that she doesn't need anything. I think every single person in the office can do their part to actively champion and sponsor women in the workplace. And so it's not limited to just when it's Women's History Month or International Women's Day, but to really challenge ourselves to think about what we can do every single day to be a better advocate.
I love that. I agree with everything you just said. Listen, acknowledge, step back so others can step forward. Thank you both for sharing that. As I mentioned earlier, 28% of tech jobs are being held by women in today's job market. So we're still underrepresented, and it's more important than ever. Binish, if there was one single piece of advice that you have for women starting off in their career, looking back even from your career and not really starting in IT, right? Or building their career in IT, what would you give them?
Advocate for yourself. Speak up when necessary and challenge those stereotypes and biases when you encounter them, right? And I will say, focus on your skills, your experience, and your achievements rather than your gender, right? You're always bring your best to the table. I think it just goes a long way. And Rachel, you had started to talk about that, speaking up for yourself and making room for yourself at the table. And, if there isn't a seat at the table, bring your own chair, your elbows out, make get in there. And it could be really, really challenging and scary at first. But then if you just kind of do it the first few times, you'll feel a lot more comfortable doing it over and over again. I'll admit, I have shamelessly, looked at people's calendars to see if there's a meeting that I should have been in. And I've kind of pinged them and say hey, can I join? So just always speak up. What's the worst that's going to happen, right? They'll say no, maybe not now, but next time they might just keep you in mind. So be sure to advocate for yourself.
Tammylynne, love to hear from you.
I really like that, Binish. I also feel like making it easy for people to give you feedback is something that has worked for me personally, and I do it even now. So if there's a meeting that I want to go to or something I want to do, I'll ask my boss, I'm like, literally, you're not going to hurt my feelings, but I'd like to do this. Does that work or no? Just make it really easy for them, because I think when you are asking for things, people don't want to tell you no, and sometimes that's a great strategy too. And other times, I work in an environment where there's a lot of men in leadership, right? And so if I'm looking for critical feedback and I feel like they're just kind of glancing the surface, they're not giving me the big things, I'll be like, I'm not going to cry. So please just tell me what it is that we can do differently. As far as additional advice, I think being clear about what you want, as Binish said, is really important. Also, be really clear around how your performance is being evaluated. I feel like there's often a disconnect, in particular for women, around how their performance is being evaluated. I think I've seen a lot of women that, I get along with everybody, I volunteer for extra tasks, I do all these things, why isn't that an exceeds? Well, it's great that you're doing the extra credit stuff, but look at your goals, and these are the delivery dates, and this is whatever those are. Make sure that you understand always how your performance is being evaluated, and also understand, what is that criteria as people are looking for promotional roles, right? So, if you're looking to be the senior of whatever it is that you are, what are the skills or the attributes that your leader is going to be looking for when making that change? It may not be just doing a really good job with your existing role. Maybe it's the ability to influence others. Maybe it's something else. And so just make sure that you understand, what that criteria will be as you're trying to get to that next level in your career.
Yes, let that feedback fuel, right, your next opportunity. And I have to answer this because I feel like I have a lot of women on my team, and I think one thing that I always talk to them about is ask other women about their experiences, whether it's in the organization that you have, or a peer or a friend or a family member, but hearing firsthand stories about their experience, what they went through, what they're going through, what wins, what opportunities. I have a colleague that always says the glows and the grows that you have in an organization, and acknowledge all those female colleagues that you have with them, because they experience their stories differently, and just listening to them. So thank you both for sharing. Hopefully some of our audience members took some of that and will utilize that in their day-to-day. So as we are encouraging and supporting women who are interested in pursuing careers in technology, what do you guys all prioritize? How are you encouraging and supporting women in your life, both personally and professionally?
Can you still hear me?
We can hear you, we can't see you, but that's okay. Binish, do you want to start? Yeah.
For sure. I think giving them that confidence booster, right, personally and professionally, like finding your hype crew, if you will, like someone who's gonna give you that great booster of confidence. They know you well, they know that you can do it, but then there's that self-doubt that creeps in, right? So like finding those people in your life, that's so incredibly important personally and professionally. And then I will also say just creating those network opportunities. It's key, right? And it's not just going to a happy hour, right? Creating networking opportunities in your day to day. So it's not like, I think as women, we take on a lot and we just like give, like that's sort of the mentality, right? So like find ways to incorporate that into just how you work your day to day. So bring someone junior along with you to a critical meeting, right? Like, giving them that opportunity to network. And then Tammylynne, as you were talking about, like planning a holiday party gives you exposure to executives. That's a really great move. I love that. It's like I'm like sitting here taking notes. But yeah, like networking opportunities can like exist in so many different ways, and really taking advantage of that. And then just like have a lending ear, right? Just like making sure that you're like listening and being there for them and giving them advice, that guidance that's needed.
I think one of the things we can do is really encourage women to find their own professional style in the workplace, because the more closely your work self resembles your at-home self, I think that you'll just be more successful. And I'll give you an example of that. So, earlier in my career, I thought I had to do all the things to fit in, right? So you're in an all-guy leadership team. All right, let's go smoke cigars and drink scotch. I mean, I don't like scotch or cigars, but I am a team player. And what I've realized over the years is that, the more you do that and you're doing things that really just aren't you, I mean, it's exhausting, right? It just takes more effort. And so it makes me less likely to want to do those things. But if we're doing something that I enjoy, then, I have genuine enthusiasm for what we're doing. And so finding your own way to connect with people, your own way to build relationships, your own way to expand your network is really important. And, we had a company event, I don't know, a couple years ago. And one of the things we did is we went to this offsite, and it was like music and drinks, and it was like a whole thing, which is great if you like want to sit and drink a lot. But if you don't, then it was like too loud to talk. It was, and so, the most authentic thing for me was that I really wanted to take a shuttle and go back to the hotel and maybe just like sit in the lobby and chat with people there. So, my most authentic thing was to round up 15 other people that didn't want to be there either. And we brokered an early shuttle back, and we just sat in the lobby and had a great conversation. And not only did I get genuine appreciation from those other people that wanted to do that, but, I was saying like, hey, I'm not being antisocial. I'm not saying that I don't want to participate and be part of things, but, my natural preferred state is not this. And so, there's probably other people that want to do that too. And so, you don't have to sacrifice who you are personally to build those relationships and to network and to, meet new people.
I love that. Find your own style. Something that I will sticky note that on my computer. I love that. So just as a reminder for those that are attending, please add any questions, comments, feedback into the questionnaire, into the chat, and we'll address those here in a few minutes. I have one last question, just because I'm sure a lot of people on the call probably are wanting your insight into. Are there any books, articles, blogs, even podcasts that you particularly are interested in right now that maybe hit the technology space, maybe don't, and you just want to share with the group?
Well, I think everybody's probably already read Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In by now. So, if you haven't, be sure to grab that. The other piece that I just read in the last month was a book called You Should Smile More. And it's written by a group of women, all professionals, all C-level folks. They work together at PepsiCo. And they talk about all these different scenarios that they've experienced in their career. But what I loved about it is that it gave very tactical tips around how to combat that. So if you're the leader, here's how you can support your team members. And if you're a team member, here's what you can do in that situation. And, you know, with the personal examples that they've gotten, and they've done, you know, hundreds of interviews of women in their career at different stages. If nothing else, I thought it was really refreshing, and I don't know, it was validating for me, because some of the stuff, when it happens, you don't always know, like, am I being too sensitive, or, ooh, is this, you know, is this maybe okay? But just seeing it and seeing that other women have gone through those things, it you know, it really resonates. I'll give you an example. So in 2008, I had just returned from maternity leave with my first child, and we're going to go into this 3-day meeting, and it's going to be deep strategy, head count, budget, all the things. We're going to talk about all these things. And I share with my leader, like, I need to pump, right? Like, I need some breaks here so I can pump. I got to refrigerate. I got to do a whole bunch of stuff. And, you know, at the time he was like, yeah, take all the time you need. Just, you know, leave as you need to. Which is fine, but like, I'm going to miss all the conversation then, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, in terms of like actually offering me accommodations, it would have been, okay, let's plan some breaks in here so that doesn't everybody want a 15-minute break after we've been talking for 4 hours? Like, it seems like we could have done more. And so now as a leader, I understand that. But at the time I was like, well, it's great that I can, you know, take all the time I need, but I'm going to miss a lot of content here. So I just really appreciated the real world examples that were in that book. So it's called You Should Smile More.
You should smile. Perfect. We will send that out to the group so they have that. Binish, what about you?
Yeah, it's so funny, Tammylynne, when you were talking about being your authentic self, I kept thinking about this book called The Power of Onlyness by Nilofer Marchand. And she talks about how your own unique perspective can benefit, you know, whatever space that you're in professionally and personally. And I think a lot of us kind of want to conform to the norm, right? Like, we want to fit in, and we're so afraid to speak up and have our own unique perspective on things. And then, you know, she talks about how it, like, you know, like their own uniqueness, their onlyness, right? No one else could bring that to the table, and you have the power to make a positive impact in the world. And I thought that was so, and it's one of those things when someone says it, I'm like, yeah, of course that makes sense, but it's definitely not something that you, like, you know, you realize on your own, because then you're like, oh, like, I've got this small idea or this small, like, comment on this topic, you know, in a big room full of executives, and might not even bring anything to the table. But, you know, like, go back to speaking up and being part of the conversation, and valuing your, you know, the power of onlyness can go a long way. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you both for sharing. Those are great, and 2 books that I will definitely be looking at, as I'm sure a few others will be too on this call. So just to kind of wrap things up, I want to make sure, once again, if you have a question for Binish or Tammylynne or myself, please feel free to put it in the chat. One of the questions that we did get for both of you is if there's any courses or certifications you recommend for women advancing their career in technology.
I think it's the tech industry is so broad, right? So going back to Tammylynne, when she talked about, like, really figure out what you want to do and then pursue, you know, that technical course. I think from a software engineering perspective, I can say like, there are a lot of those, like, online boot camps. And there's so many of them, and it's really overwhelming. And my advice would be to not go for something that's going to cover all of the topics. When it comes to technical skills, like, in the beginning, you want to create that foundation, you want to specialize, and then you start, like, you know, start to build up your portfolio of the different technologies that that you want to invest into. So, like, that's what I would say.
I think the certifications, I mean, I'm a big proponent of continuous learning. I think the certifications are especially helpful if you're either trying to make a change between, you know, one role to another, or if you're trying to maybe change companies. And what I mean by that is, let's say you are a project manager in HR and you want to be an IT project manager. I think a PMP certification can demonstrate that you have all the same skills that are expected in that role. If you are an infrastructure person who's really been doing a lot of work with security and you feel like either you're not getting credit for it in your company or you're looking to make a change to a different company, I think a certification in cyber will help validate the skills that you've already learned on the job. I think, it's one of those setting expectations sort of a thing. I have found in my career that many women will think like, well, I get this thing and then I'll get promoted. And so as long as your expectations are in line with your manager, because there isn't necessarily a correlation with that, right? So what are the expectations for the next role? And will this course or certification, will that help you achieve that? If it will, absolutely. But if what's holding you back is not that certification, if it's something else, you may want to consider investing that 40 hours into that other thing that's really going to serve you better in your career. And like I said, I'm a fan of certifications. I'm a fan of continuous learning. I just want to make sure that people understand the goal of what that certification will do. In my MBA class, 98% of the people in my class were expecting a promotion the minute they graduated. That didn't happen. So, just be clear around what you're trying to learn it for, and make sure that your expectations are aligned with your leader.
Not just checking a box. It's actually going to help you in your career. Speaking of career growth, we had another question come up for both of you. Have either of you lost a promotion to a man? If so, how did you approach the hiring manager in asking for feedback on why?
Did I lose you, or can you still hear me?
We lost your video, but we can hear you.
Oh, jeez. I'm literally in my office. I have no idea what's happening here. Okay, so for sure, I have lost promotions to men. I think this is just my perspective. I think you have to be careful with this because you can't assume that you lost the promotion because you're a woman, right? I feel like most organizations are at a point where we're beyond that. And so you might have lost it for other reasons. I think it's always appropriate to ask for feedback, to ask for examples. You have to understand that people have to really trust you to share really meaningful feedback with you, right? So know yourself, and if you're going to be emotional, or if it's going to be a hard conversation, maybe you start with an email like, in our next touch base, I'd like to discuss these items. I mean, prepare them so that they understand what's coming. I think asking for the feedback is always correct. I've for sure not gotten more promotions than I've gotten, right? That's just kind of the nature of the working world. I've not gotten more jobs than I've gotten, right? But I don't know that I ever make the assumption that it's because I'm a woman I didn't get it. I mean, there's a myriad of reasons and you can ask for that feedback, but for sure, have lost all kinds of things to men and women alike.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to your point, Tammylynne, like sometimes it's not simply that someone's looking at us because, they're not evaluating us on our gender, but like there are certain traits that we have, right? Like where we're not as confident as our male colleagues, right? We don't speak up as much as they do, and sometimes that could get in the way. So like definitely asking for feedback, looking at it through the lens of the business, right? Like how is this person going to provide more value to the business versus you? Like just having that mindset kind of helps remove the emotions from the situation and helps you like better analyze it.
Love it. Okay, so I know you both are moms. How do you find a work-life balance to focus your energy on your personal life, family, and friends when you need to? How do you find that balance? I'm always struggling with the whole work-life balance piece, right? Like work is part of your life. It shouldn't be a 50-50 split, but how do you guys balance it?
We've had a lot of conversations in our household about this recently. My youngest is 8. Her name is Emily. My middle is Molly. She's 10. And my son is 14. And, I heard a speaker about a month ago call it's not work-life balance, it's work-life harmony. And what that means is sometimes one gets more than the other. And, I'm prepping some stuff for a board meeting, and so I've had some late nights this week. And I had a really meaningful conversation with my middle daughter that talked about, what is my job and why do I do it? And then I talked to her about what her job is. And her job is to do school and to practice piano, but part of her job is to support me in doing my job, right? And so when I know I would obviously rather be home with you than doing what I'm doing. But if I can't be home with you, one of the things that you can do as part of your job to support me is to maybe not call me crying that you wish that I was home, right? Like, or sending me angry text messages like, when are you coming home? Question mark, question mark. We talked about this yesterday. You knew it was going to be a long night. I'm sorry. I don't like that either. But part of your job in supporting me is just understanding that sometimes I have to do my job. And so we talk about, all the advantages that come with that job. I mean, my girls get out of school at 2:30 in the afternoon. That's pretty early, right? So on a Friday, if I can, be at the house at 2:30 when they get home from school, that's a pretty big deal, right? That's some work-life harmony right there. And if that means that I wasn't there at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, well, sometimes there's a trade-off with those things. I think one of the things that's important is with your partner, to set some boundaries around things that you can never compromise on. And for us, I mean, there aren't that many. I check my email all the time. It's, but, one of the compromises that or the things that we will not compromise on is I won't move a family trip, right? There's so much planning that goes into planning a spring break trip or something else or whatever. It doesn't matter if there's an investor day that's scheduled during that week. I'll figure out support for my team, whatever, but I will not physically change, any trips that we have planned. So, figure out what your boundaries are. I do take, a lot of travel opportunities with my kids. And as a result, I will always be available to my team, right? That's one of the things that I think gives me the flexibility to travel and to do things, is that they can always reach me. I'll be current on email. I'm going to answer text messages. I'm going to answer phone calls. And, I feel like if my kids get me 23 and a half hours of the day on vacation and I have to do something for 30 minutes, I think that's still a pretty good, work-life harmony.
My youngest one is, almost 3. So I'm still figuring out this balance, but I remember a week before going back to work with my first daughter, just like calling someone that I have a lot of respect for, just like in tears, saying that I don't know if I could do it. Like, I don't want people to view me differently. And I remember, against her advice, I spent the very first month just going at work really hard, going out of my way to prove that, like, hey, I'm still the same person. I can still do all of those things, even though I've got a little one to care for, and I also have to like pump or nurse, because it was during COVID at that time. And then I had to, and obviously I like crashed, I burnt. It was too much, right? So then it started off with like owning your calendar, setting those boundaries, at home and also at work. Like, I might have, have to log off at 4:30 to go pick up my daughter, but then, hey, I'll be back around after I put them down to bed, and then I'll be online and I'll catch up on whatever I missed. Or if it's really critical, just like let me know at least a few days in advance, so then I could figure out childcare, and then, work with me. So like communication goes a long way too. So yeah.
I have a 15-month. I was going to say.
I'm sorry, Rachel.
No, go. I have a 15-month-old, and both my husband and him are at home sick, right? So there's the balance of, I'm sorry to leave you, but this is important to me. And he understood and everything, but you have to find that balance and time block. Time block is important as well. I find myself doing that, saying like, hey, this hour and a half is daycare pickup, and get to spend some time with him before he goes to bed, but I'll be online. I'll respond to your emails. I'll get to you. But it's not always reciprocated, right? It's not always understood or brought in. But sorry, Tammylynne, you were going to say something.
I just had 2 thoughts. That transition when you come back from a maternity leave is a challenge, and it just makes me laugh, because that's when I started wearing makeup. I didn't really wear makeup before I had kids, but I could not go back to work and have people like, wow, she looks really rough. I mean, things must be going. I was like, I felt the need to be like over polished compared to what I was before. And, as far as, your balance with, with having young children at home, I think the longer we're in the workplace, I think you find what that balance of effort is. type A activator, hard charging. But, you know, if you think about that time before you had kids, at least for me, you know, I would be hard charging and really driven. And I would also kind of end up waiting around a lot for people. Like I did all my stuff super fast, and then I'm just kind of waiting around. And so I think, you know, for me, in many respects, having children has helped me keep pace with people a little bit better, right? So I would do it super fast and really well, and I'd be like, what's wrong with everybody else? And now that I have maybe a more normal pace, it's you know, I feel like I'm more in sync with people, and I'm probably a lot less irritated or impatient. So you know, hats off to you guys. You guys have young kids. What I will tell you is that, like, in time versus complexity, what you're doing right now is super hard, and it's very time intensive. The good news, though, is that the complexity is lower, right? So, you know, you can tell bedtime stories or feed them or whatever, and you're probably not going to say anything that's going to like make them burst into tears. But like when you got like a 14-year-old or a 10-year-old or whatever, like suddenly everything you say becomes much more, you know, charged. And I don't have to help them like brush their teeth or take a shower, but holy cats, if I say the wrong thing at dinner, like I'm going to pay for that for the next couple hours. So I think you guys
Well,
are
we will
doing
be
great.
definitely reaching out to you for advice.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will say though, I think it is very like Tammylynne, I really liked what you said about like your kids seeing what you do at work, right? And how and something that you enjoy doing, and then the support that you need from them. Because I think that's definitely one of the things that keeps me going on those really hard days. Like I don't want to quit. It's funny because my husband and I have talked about this. Like if one of us is going to be a stay-at-home parent, it's going to be him. Like I absolutely love what I do, and I love that we have that, you know, understanding. But I want my daughter to see me, someone that who didn't stop her career to, like, you know, stay home. And not that there's anything wrong with it, but like me personally, that's a choice that I've made, and I'm like sticking to it. And I want her to see that, and then eventually, like, you know, support me there. So I really love that perspective.
Oh, that's amazing. Binish, we should chat offline. My husband is like semi-retired now. It's been a
Yeah.
really good move for our family. I bring my girls in, like you see the hearts and the good luck. I had a speaking engagement that I brought them in so they could see. I just think the more exposure they have so they understand what happens here makes them feel a little bit less left out. And I think they just develop a greater appreciation for the things that we do as, you know, working moms.
For sure.
Well, I could keep talking to both of you. It's been a lovely conversation. I'm sure the audience has felt the same way. We didn't get to all the questions, but we'll definitely send those over and send a follow-up. Thank you both, Tammylynne, Binish. It was a pleasure talking to you both, and happy Women's History Month.
To you as well. Bye, guys.
Everyone.
Bye.